Are you taking any action? Are you taking any action? Let's break it down. Welcome back to another video. Welcome to my channel. Make it an amazing day. Next month I will have 20 years clean, sober, and spiritual. But I have more time than that in the 12-step program and a spiritual walk. I was introduced to spirituality in the 12-step program in 1988. In 2001, I became complacent and felt that I could live a spiritual life based on truths, T-R-U-T-H, that I had memorized. And I was not only good at memorizing what was in the AA book, I had memorized lots of quotes, spiritual nuggets, wisdom from various people over the ages. During those 13 years, at some point, I was held in high esteem because I knew the book, they said. He knows the book, I'm sticking with him. I did help a lot of people. There's no doubt about that. But I let my pride take the lead. Too much praise, being put on a pedestal, and everything else that goes along with that. So I picked up a drink in September 2001, the day after September 11th. That would be the 12th. And I stayed out there in the land of the lost. All that knowledge I had, all that memorization, was good for about 2 weeks. There was no more praise. My pride was not being fed. You could say ego, I will say pride, was not being fed. And so that stimulation, that dopamine hit was gone. I picked up a drink, and then I started doing all the things that are involved with living an unmanageable life. And it wasn't too long. I returned to a hopeless state of mind and body. And then drinking wasn't enough. And the other elements I got involved with, well, twice I had to be resuscitated back to life. I was lucky, I was fortunate, thank God. All those things, I made it back to the 12-step program, August 24th, 2004. But I had a different approach this time. Instead of being that guy that had the book memorized, instead of being that guy that could quote wise quotes, I decided to go against the grain and actually practice spiritual principles and then maintain a spiritual condition based on those principles in the AA books, the basic text and the 12 and 12, but then expanding on it to teachings, ancient teachings from time of antiquity, thousands of years before the Common Era. And of course, other people took over that big book memorization. I've seen people say a certain page, then go down 8 sentences and here's what it says. That's what it says. A book or a quote can say one thing. The question is, what do you do with it? What do you do with that information from a book or from a quote? I could take a quote today and make a video on it. I can do that because not only just decades of spiritual knowledge, it's because I took those teachings, applied them to my life. What worked, I kept. What didn't, I cast aside. And it hasn't ended since 2004. How's that even possible? I'll tell you. The goal in the 12-step program is to have a spiritual awakening, a psychic change, a personality change. But then what? Then what? Have you ever heard the term, the sky's the limit? Oh yeah, the sky's the limit. That's a lie. There are no limits. None. None. The knowledge you study and apply to your life what happens after that is beyond the sky. You are what I've once described in the state of the universe, never ending, always expanding. That's called transcendence. Transcendence. Transcendence means to exist or experience above the normal level. And the physical level. to exist and experience above the normal level and the physical level. The only way to get there is by action. If you watched my previous videos, I do one or two things with words or statements or phrases. I look up the etymology of them or the origin of them. Etymology of words and phrases or quotes, and the origins of them, which usually is in Latin or Greek, mostly Greek. Or if I keep it simple, I just go to a 1951 Thorndike Barnhart desk dictionary, and they're still available online. Because I found from decades of experience reading dictionaries that one's pretty reliable when it comes to being fair and balanced. What I mean by that is, if you're not aware, as times change, definitions of words change. They change due to religious influence, they change due to government influence, and what's going on at the time, social movements. So in my 1951 dictionary, I looked up the word action. There's, I think, 7 descriptions to choose from. And then one jumped out at me. Movement. Movement. To move. I hear people say, take action. Action means to move. Where are you moving to? Above the normal level, above the physical level. Body and mind. Above the normal level. Have you ever heard someone say, I'm not acting my usual self, I'm not normal? Maybe someone said they've been ill and now I'm back to normal. Another saying is, that's par for the course. That's normal for that particular activity or situation. Par for the course. Normal. In the spiritual world, there is a place, a dimension, you could say, above normal, above the normal level, where you can exist or experience it. In the spiritual world, there's a place or a dimension, you could say, above the physical level. You can exist in it and experience it, but you won't get there unless you take some action. You won't get there unless you move, unless there's movement involved. You might relate to this. You might relate to this. Early on, a few decades ago, I started studying the Masters. Ancient teachings and masters from antiquity. Let's just say the Stoics or Aristotle, before the Common Era. And then I started to look at, investigate, research, and study modern masters. There are many, too many to even name. And in the beginning of my spiritual walk, the second time I started to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, not just from alcohol, not just from alcohol. Alcohol, I wasn't recovering just from alcohol. Alcohol just doesn't affect the body, it affects the mind, how we think. And there was a period of time I would see these quotes from the masters, modern masters, you know who they are, memorize them and repeat them here and there on a whim. I'm not sure if that's just the process that people go through. However, albeit nonetheless, when I discovered that I was doing that, how did I discover it? Because I sit in silence first thing every morning. And I do honest appraisals of not just my behavior, I do honest appraisals of my thinking patterns. What helped me the most to start to take action was studying the Stoics. Then I studied the teachings of Confucius. Then I studied Hindu teachings. Then I studied Buddhism. Then I studied Sufism, to name a few. And that's when I reached the point that I realized I need to take these teachings and apply them to my life. Take action, in other words. And I did. And I saw results. The results were my quality of life improved. What also helped me raise my awareness and get rid of those shackles I was wearing was to clear away the wreckage of the past and follow those steps. So when I came back in 2004, I went through the steps again, as honest as I could be and as thorough as I could be. You can look them up and read them, 12 steps of the 12-step program, and they're just not for alcoholics or drug addicts. In the beginning of the 12-step book, and I know I'm repeating myself again, it says, the principles in the 12-step program were borrowed from the medical society. Doctors, medical doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists. They were also borrowed from religion, ideas from religion. And in 1935, when the first book was written, and in 1955, when the second book was written, they still called it religion. Everything was called religion back then. They didn't call it spiritual paths and spiritual ways. Although in the beginning of the AA Big Book, it does mention that different spiritual paths read the 12 steps and agreed with what's in there, the spiritual principles that are codified into those steps. Take out alcohol, take the word alcohol out of those 12 steps or a drug, and insert that thing that is making your life unmanageable. Action. You need to move. Movement. At a specific point, I was able to say, as far as making amends goes, as far as conquering character defects and shortcomings, I made as many amends as I could face to face. I followed procedures, put those teachings into practice, and conquered quite a few defects. Some are still left. I'm working on them. Might be till the day I die. I don't know. But I'm aware today, through those 3 principles I follow, what the current defects and shortcomings are. So those 3 principles: 1, from the time I wake up till the time I go to sleep, not to harm anyone with words or deeds. And throughout the day, or at night, or maybe the next morning as I sit in silence the next morning, but throughout the day, because my consciousness has been raised, and I realize that I behaved inappropriately to someone, I need to correct that immediately. And of course, I review who the person is involved, what I did or said, and should I approach them while they're still smarting from the offense. These things. And then when that's done, I go back into meditation again. I call it meditation. It's sitting in silence. Typically, I go down to my sacred grove, look at the situation again, and ask myself, what could I have done to make that differently? What could I have done differently to not make that mistake again? In most cases, the answer is obvious. So that's the first principle. The second principle is to not be involved in destructive or useless activities. I was, at one point in my life, not recently, consumed by destructive activities and useless activities. Then I grew up, spiritually speaking, matured. Let me give you a list of activities that are destructive or useless. 1, engaging in debates with people over stupid stuff, just so you could say at the end of it, I was right. Useless arguments, that's one. What's another destructive or useless activity? Playing video games all day. Another one is watching pornography all day. Another one is gambling all day. Another one is, unless you have a bona fide disability, eating all day. Other destructive activity or useless activity is, if somebody upsets me, to think how I could get back at them. That's destructive activity. If you get upset and you got to have a drink, and then you drink too much, to put it mildly, that's a destructive activity. What else is a destructive activity? Why does this always happen to me? It's called self-pity. That's not only destructive, it's useless as well. It doesn't get you anywhere. Well, it might get you to a pity party. I like parties, but I don't like pity parties. And the parties I like are like things I shouldn't eat, pizza, those types of parties. What are some other destructive and useless activities you could get involved in? You don't have to leave it in a comment below. On this channel, we discuss things that other channels don't. Would you put a Band-Aid on a shotgun wound? No. So we go deep, down a rabbit hole, as they say today. We get gangster about spiritual things. Maybe something happened to you somewhere along your life, and now you're addicted to sex. You have a whole bunch of sexual partners. I'm not saying it's wrong, but if it makes your life unmanageable, then it's a problem. What else is destructive and useless? The third principle is to not put anything into my system that affects my faculties in a negative way. To make a great effort every day not to put anything into my system that affects my faculties in a negative way. I could honestly say to you, I fall short with this vape. I used to smoke cigarettes. This has less nicotine and I don't get the flavored ones, but it's still dangerous. It's still not good. I eat pretty healthy and sometimes I have cheat days. Well, not sometime. I do. But sometimes that one cheat day isn't enough. And for some reason, and my weakness is ice cream, I'll go and get some ice cream. It's okay once in a while. Have you ever heard the term? Have you ever been to a meal, maybe a holiday or a buffet, whatever, and somebody says this meal is fit for a king? There's a story behind that, actually. I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe the Renaissance years it was. People did not eat like royalty. They didn't have desserts. They didn't have plenty of food to eat. And their food wasn't, well, let's say nutritious. So there's that. I developed those 3 principles out of all my studies of various religious tenets, doctrines, religions, spiritual paths, spiritual ways, and my experience in the 12-step program. And my aim every day, my goal every day is to not miss my mark with those 3 principles. And if I do fall short, to correct it. Review it. And then say, what could I have done differently? That's action. That's action. That's movement. I'm not just moving my body to find a place to sit in silence, unencumbered by distractions, but I'm moving thoughts in my brain, in my mind. So here's what I want to say. You decide. You decide. Do you want to strictly adhere to a certain religion or a spiritual path, spiritual way, and go for that, and adhere to the teachings of the religion, spiritual path, or spiritual way, and that's it, nothing else. Or you want to take some nuggets from all of them, apply them to your life, see what works and what doesn't work, cast aside, and move from there. Maybe later on you decide to commit to one religion, commit to one spiritual path, commit to one spiritual way. But you have to start somewhere. You need to start somewhere. If you don't, and all you're doing is watching videos on YouTube of, let's say, spiritual masters and mystics from modern times, and that makes you feel good, that's all it does, is make you feel good. You're putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. You're not repairing the damage. You're not fixing what it is in your life that makes your life unmanageable. Here's the other option. You don't have to. Start somewhere like what I do. First thing in the morning, get up. You go to the bathroom. I go outside with a coffee. Some people are like, well, you shouldn't meditate with a coffee. Well, it's been working so far. I grab a coffee, grab a tea, whatever. Sit there in silence for 5 to 10 minutes. So I take a sip of my coffee, and then I just let my thoughts flow. And then, as I said, at some point my thoughts become still, and then I collect my thoughts. What's important today? What do I need to do? What do I have to do? Does it involve something physical? When do I have the most energy? I also practice pratyahara. My guru says to do it for at least an hour. I'm not there yet. That's just closing your eyes and sitting in silence for as long as you can. What you're doing is disengaging all your senses. No coffee there. No vape there. No cigarettes. No music. Sit there as long as you can with your eyes closed. Disengage your senses, in other words. So I've developed a routine now. And the time it takes to do it doesn't seem like a challenge as it was when I first started. But it produces results. It produces results. So start in the morning, 5 to 10 minutes, first thing. Just sitting in silence, let your thoughts flow. Eventually they'll slow down. You can say, what's important today? What do I need to do today? Well, go to work, okay. What do I have to do today? Well, I have to cut my grass, let's say. And that's also falls in the category of physical things. If that matters to you when you have the most energy. What's important? Start that every day. And just be mindful of those 3 principles. And if you fall short at what you aim for, try to correct that mistake. I didn't get it at first. I had to continue working towards perfection, but I know I have days where I don't violate the first 2 principles, but I fall short here with this vape. I don't care who it is. Well, I do care. It doesn't matter to me who it is. I know everyone makes mistakes. And not just that. Everyone has something to hide for whatever reason. Everyone has something to hide. And you may watch a video of one of the modern day spiritual masters, or somebody on YouTube that has a lot of subscribers and videos, and for that moment in time, you don't get to see them make a mistake. You don't get to see what they're hiding. Everybody's hiding something for whatever reason. Nobody's perfect. Not even Johann. I just have those 3 little principles, and yeah, I've admitted to you I'm honest where I fall short. And I'm not saying it so I get more views. However, albeit nonetheless, if you have to, watch this video again. And you don't have to do my 3 principles. I think it's in Buddhism, the 4 truths. Is it 4 truths? You could commit yourself to one day at a time, following that to the best of your ability. You get the gist now. You need to commit to something. You need to develop a routine. And whatever you decide to do, when I say sit in silence in the morning for 5 or 10 minutes, I didn't invent that. I'm not the only one doing it. If you could sit in a yoga position, that's good too. I have physical disabilities that prevent me from doing that. Well, I could try, but it's painful. Do the best you can. I've seen them in yoga classes have like that seat so they could sit in it, still cross their legs, and be balanced. All these things. You need to take some kind of action. You need to move, or nothing's going to change. You heard that saying, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Whatever you choose to do, commit yourself to, and apply those principles to your life, you're going to see your quality of life improves. I think that's enough out of me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for leaving a comment. Thank you for sharing my videos. Action means movement. Not just moving the mind, or not just moving the body. Moving the thoughts in the mind. Getting rid of old information and adopting new ideas, concepts, and motives. Applying them to your life, see what works. What doesn't, cast it aside. If you're not the type to commit fully and wholly with one religion, wholly, W-H-O-L-L-Y, to one religion, spiritual path and way, don't be like I used to be. Well, I don't wear that garb, and I don't sit in a lotus position, and I don't meditate for an hour, and those different things that I thought, well, if I don't commit to just one of these things, strict commitment, if I can't do that, or won't do it, for whatever reason, I can't or won't, then I'm not doing it right, whatever it is. Google spiritual path, Google spiritual way, Google spirituality, and read it. And you're going to say, wow, there's all this stuff. Johann was right. Based on where you're at or your physical condition, pick some principles that you can apply to your life and start applying them. You got to start somewhere. You got to move. You got to take action. Do that. And you'll make it an amazing day, because it's your decision. It's your choice what kind of day you're going to have. And you'll make it an amazing life, because it's your decision. It's your choice what kind of life you're going to have. So have a good one. Keep your heart kind. Keep your mind calm. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you again.